We have such a beautiful topic to talk about this morning, the heart in silence. Perfect for the times that we are in. Also, I wanted to share something. This is just a little piece of advice because of the pandemic the entire world seems to be challenged with. We listen to news anchor men and women and politicians and so forth trying to figure out how we as a humanity can still interconnect with one another, and they've told us about arm bumps, and then no arm bumps because then you're touching one another, and then they're talking about foot bumps. Well, not everybody is that steady on their feet. And even if they are, it can find you toppling over. So I was thinking this morning, if we can go back into the Piscean age gesture of respecting one another, just like this. So we don't have to hug or anything, but still we're acknowledging the heart of one another. So don't get crazy about it, don't bend over and all of that, just a real gentle, greeting. So this morning, I am discussing how to apply these two living concepts, heart and silence, and to incorporate them into our individual, family, and group life. So I'm going to begin with a verse from the book Heart, which is an Agni Yoga book, and it's from verse 68. It says this: "Let us learn to coordinate the heart with silence." And I'm going to talk a little bit later about some of these points, but just think about this. Let us learn to coordinate the heart with silence, and try to think about, what does this mean? Coordinate the heart with silence. So I was saying, if there is ever a time, now is the time to consider silence and the heart. But the verse goes on, this silence will not be emptiness. It will suffuse, which means permeate. It will permeate space with the synthesis of thought. Just as the prayer of the heart has no need of words, so the silence that is pregnant needs no formulas. Intense silence demands many accumulations of thought and benign desires. Thus the heart, intensified by silence, replete as a dynamo, beats out of the rhythm of the universe, and personal desires are transmuted into the guiding universal will. Again, that's verse 68 from the book Heart. Let us learn to coordinate the heart with silence. Okay, what does this mean? First of all, we're going to consider the mind versus the heart. They must work together. They don't always work together harmoniously. So the mind, our mind is like a computer. Our mind is either programmed by our emotions or by our heart. Now think about this. Don't just listen to this talk with your brain, with your mind. Feel it. Bring it into you. Is your mind programmed by your emotions? I would say yes. The majority of humanity, even some of my friends, Their minds are being programmed by their emotion. So let's stop that. We want our heart to program our mind. If our mind is programmed by a pure heart, then our motives are going to be correct. And our mind will then do good work. But if the programming of our mind is done by our emotions, then glamour is going to control our mind for a very long time. Glamours will rule our heart. What are glamours? Glamours are formed by the content of our emotions, our personal desires, which once formed then takes on a life of their own. We're no longer in control of our thoughts. Our glamours, our emotions that have created the glamours, are now programming our mind, and our glamours control our actions, our behaviors, our decisions. And thus, when this happens, it takes on a life of their own, controlling our thoughts and actions. These glamours take on a life of their own. And here we are as a society thinking that we're free. Nobody can tell us what to do. They don't need to tell us what to do because our glamours are already telling us what to do. Isn't that interesting? But a pure heart programs in accordance with the divine purpose. A pure heart programs in accordance with the divine purpose. It is progressive and meets the demands of the advancing life of our soul. So to coordinate our heart with silence requires something from us. It's not just going to happen. It requires something from us. If we want to coordinate our heart with silence, and who doesn't, right? So let's make the effort. It requires us to raise the vibrations of our physical, astral, and mental levels of consciousness. To raise the vibrations to such a high state of harmony that they automatically shut off our sense of hearing on the physical, astral, and lower mental planes. Now, this takes organization. It takes a sense of building your environment in a very practical way, of taking a practical approach. Think of the term practical means practice. So what's practical for you may not be practical for me or practical for the other person. So how are we going to put into practice this operation of raising our vibrations, the vibrations of our physical, astral, and lower mental bodies? Well, curtail your time, your TV watching time. Right now, all the media, CNN, be it MSNBC, and so on and so forth, they have us glued to the news. So determine how long of time you're going to spend watching the news, being glued to the news, reading New York Times, online, offline, inline. Monitor, rather than watching the CNN news. Here's a little piece of advertising. Go to WMEA World YouTube. And instead of listening to CNN, watch some of our spiritual teachings. Listen to them. It's all, you can see it, you can hear it, you can sit in front of your computer or in front of your TV. If you do that, please make that picture small. And enjoy yourself. It's like we have such a wonderful turnout of webinar guests, can I call you, this morning. It's wonderful. Why? It's such a gift to study the teaching and to be with one another to share the teaching, because we are heart-oriented people, thinking people. So when we are with like-minded people, engaged in studying and sharing our understanding of the teaching, we are raising the vibration, of our physical, astral, and lower mental bodies. So to coordinate our heart with silence requires that we raise our consciousness above our concrete mind, above our fears, above our physical ills. Now, if someone comes to you in grief or in anger, the first thing the teaching tells us to do, common sense tells a disciple to do, is to place yourself in the silence. Place yourself in the silence. Coordinate your heart with a very deep silence. In that silence, you will radiate to that person's heart the healing energy of compassion. In such a radiation, there is no moral, no critical judgment, no giving of moral lessons and moral lessons. That means you're not going to sit that person in a state of stress and talk to them. We're a talking humanity these days because we're so important. We know so much. We're going to tell the world what they need to know. Don't do that. Place yourself in silence. Coordinate your heart with a very deep silence and radiate to that person's heart the healing energy of compassion. Silence means thoughtful meditation and contemplation. There are three most important signs of silence that are mentioned in the ancient books. The first one is the elimination of gossip. I was thinking about this, what is gossip? Typically, we consider gossip as carrying information that's personal or confidential about one person to another. That's normally how we think of gossip. But I think the definition of gossip can now expand into a broader realm, which is we take what this politician says over to that individual, and that individual's idea over to this politician, and that news media over to that news media, over to that journalist, and so on and so forth, until we're so confused. And we're seeing this now with the pandemic. Who really has the basic information? This is what we have to know. Everybody thinks that their resource is the source to go to. Well, it may be right for you, but it may not be right for me. See, it depends on our responsibility. If you have a responsibility to care for an elderly parent or a friend whose health system is compromised, your resource may be different than someone who is responsible for hundreds of people or thousands of people. They need more details. So, gossip. We learn to gossip from the social media, from radio, from TV, even some podcasts. One of the signs of the zodiac is Sagittarius. And Sagittarius says no gossip. Because why? If there is gossip, the goal is lost. So we could even say gossip includes my opinion, my prejudice, my bias, that I want to so freely give to you that we lose the goal. So instead, let us speak about something beautiful. The goal can be found only in silence. So that's the first more importance of the signs of silence, the first of three. The second sign of silence is talking about yourself. This must be eliminated. Okay, I'm not, because we won't have time to get to everything this morning, I could go into this, but think about the next time, we can do this. The next time you're engaged in a conversation with someone and you're aware of what you are saying to them, and if what you are saying to them is all about yourself, ask yourself, how is this going to inspire and improve the day of the person I am talking to, or the rest of the day, or the rest of the week? Is by talking about myself going to make them inspired and feel beautiful and joyful about life? That's the second sign of silence. Stop talking about yourself. The third sign of silence is not to cast your pearls of wisdom and ideas in front of those who are not yet ready to accept them, because they will step on them and turn on you and devour you. If people are fragile in their belief about the teaching, and they say something to their parents or their children or their friend about something as simple as like, I've just learned about karma. Wow, it's so exciting. Or, I just learned about initiation of consciousness. It is so incredible. Wait until you're 20 years into the teaching, because by that moment, at that time, no one is going to devour your principles and your belief and your faith. So as you're stepping into a new field of consciousness, stepping into the teaching of life, into, let's say, Agni yoga, which is the yoga of living ethics, wait until you assimilate and practice it, then share it. So this is why the third sign says, don't cast your pearls of wisdom in front of those who are not yet ready to accept them. Silence is listening to your innermost heart. It doesn't say to your thoughts, your brain, your mind, your prejudice, your bias, and so forth. Listen to your innermost heart. Another part of the verse told us, but this silence will not be emptiness. It will permeate space with the synthesis of thought. The synthesis of thought. Silence will not be emptiness. It will suffuse or permeate space with the synthesis of thought. We're permeating space this morning. As we begin to understand that silence comes from the sanctuary of a purified heart, we will come to realize our connection with the universal heart, the cosmic magnet. When we become fused with the heart of the universe, we will be in contact with the wisdom of the ages, because we are told this is the source of the teaching from the cosmic magnet. The silence of such a heart will be one that is holistic, one that is compassionate, liberating. Think of this. This is the heart of such a person. Pardon me, it's allergies. Nothing else. Okay, just allergy. No cough. Okay. Sorry to interrupt myself. I just, I had to. Okay, so this, because it'll happen again. Anyway. So, let me go over this again. The silence of this kind of heart, this person who has a pure heart, will be one that is holistic and compassionate and liberating and all understanding and ever expanding. Such thoughts of this person, these individuals, these groups, will be full of bliss and serenity and beauty. The heart of such a person will see the vision of the future. Will see the vision of the future. The heart that is programmed by the mind is seen in the person whose behaviors are born from the personality. They are full of vanity. They are full of showing off. They're aggressive people. They are selfish. They are separative. They are earthbound. They are past-oriented. Agni yogis are future-oriented. You don't have to call yourself an Agni yogi. It's not even, nobody would understand it anyway. So, an aspirant, a disciple, an Agni yogi is one who is becoming the future. They're not past-oriented. The verse said, just as the prayer of the heart has no need of words, so the silence that is pregnant needs no formulas. When a person comes to you with their pains and suffering, their sorrows and hurts, and you have learned how to coordinate your heart with silence, you will be able to help that person find joy. To find joy in their life, to show them how to heal themselves, or just exemplify through your own nature, your own heart nature, how you heal yourself, how you heal your hurts and your rejections and all that life has burdened you with. You show them how you put the teaching into your life, and how that teaching has transformed your consciousness day by day. And this is how you heal yourself. This is how you can exemplify healing for another person. You don't have to do it particularly, oh my God. But he put it, what do they call it? I can't think of it. It's healing, you have to put your hands on a person to heal them. What is that called? Touch, healing touch? Okay. What? What is
Healing touch.
Healing touch, okay. We don't have to do a healing touch anymore. We're touching by our heart. We are in such incredible times. I have to find the right language here. Healing of hands, healing on of hands, that's what it's called. Okay. People need to know how to gradually make contact with the flame of life. And it is done through the virtues of compassion and love and understanding, forgiveness and tolerance, enthusiasm, joy. The virtues that you know. This is how we put ourselves and others in contact with the flame of life. People normally are very effusive when a person approaches them with their difficulties. I want to save you. I'm going to save this person. They want to fix that person. And in their desire to save that person, they will oftentimes share their academic knowledge, believing this is how that person is going to find the peace to solving the solution to their difficulties. Where it might be that at some time later, academic or philosophical or psychological information might be helpful to the person's mind, initially it isn't. This is so interesting. I was thinking about this situation I was in many years ago, thank God. And I was probably in one of the most distraught places I'd ever found myself. And I was so upset and so sad and so depressed. And I sat down with a counselor, spiritual counselor, and that counselor gave me a sweater. And that sweater was permeated with the energy of love. We never said anything. I just sat down and she says, I have a gift for you. And she handed me this sweater. It had psychic energy in it. And all of my problems went away. And they were serious problems, believe me. They all went away. Psychic energy, not philosophy, heals. One day, a wise person shared a story about a woman who had lost her 2 daughters. Now, just imagine this. We've all experienced losses of parents, of spouses, of children. But imagine a woman who has lost 2 of her daughters at the same time. The wise man explained that she was in a desperate condition, while everyone around her was trying to comfort her with no result. Knowing the power of the heart, he approached her, pulled her head to his heart, and kept it there for a few minutes in silence. He said when he lifted her head, she opened her eyes and said, I guess it was God's will. She said, I feel all right. I think I can overcome my grief. She said, as you were holding my head, I began to think about the continuity of life on other planes and infinity. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, another part of the verse says, intense silence demands many accumulation of thought and benign desires. Thus the heart, intensified by silence, replete as a dynamo, bears out the rhythm of the universe, and personal desires are transmuted into the guiding universal will. A heart intensified by silence means that our heart has become a sanctuary. Think of this sanctuary that White Mountain has right here. This sanctuary is a heart. It is not a mind. It's got blue carpet and beautiful Rourke prints and the Maitreya statue that is pure silver and so beautiful, and flowers and candles and wonderful people. Why? Because it is a sanctuary of the heart. A sanctified heart is a pure heart, a pure sanctuary. That's what we are bathing ourselves in this morning. in a pure heart, not watching CNN and MSNBC. But I will tell you one thing that I'm doing. I have this wonderful relationship with my Sirius XM radio in my car. And for a while on Channel 105, they are playing old reruns of Johnny Carson's show. So I laugh all the way over here this morning. It's just, anyway, if you have Sirius XM radio, go to Channel 105. It's a hoot. Anyway, I hope you allow that. A heart intensified by silence is one that is no longer controlled by the mind. In other words, glamours and illusions, but by the rhythm of the universe, by the heart of the universe. The heart of such a person is no longer controlled by their personal desires, but by the life of the Great One, by the one almighty power in the universe, the universal will. The role of the human heart is the accumulation and transmutation of energies. As our consciousness becomes elevated above our personality nature and into our soul consciousness, then we are no longer inclined to direct others, to boss others, to guide others, even though our motive is beautiful. Our consciousness becomes elevated. As it does, we are no longer inclined to be bossy and directive and authoritative and so forth. But through the purity of our transformed heart. In other words, no longer are we going to guide others by our lower nature, but by the purity of our transformed heart. And our own life will no longer be directed by our personal desires, but through the sanctuary of our heart. So remember, to coordinate your heart with silence requires you to purify your personality nature and to raise it to extreme integrity. Raise it to extreme integrity. When you enter into the third initiation of consciousness, you enter into a deep silence. And when this occurs, a voice is going to address you. That voice may be your inner guide. That inner guide will likely speak to you first, then your master. And after you hear the voice of the master, you will hear the voice of Christ. Have you heard the voice of silence? Or the voice in extreme silence? Have you? When the vibrations of your physical, astral, and mental realms are harmonized and raised to such a degree they automatically shut off. So you don't have to shut it off. It's automatically done. They automatically shut off the sense of hearing on the physical and astral planes and open your hearing on the higher mental plane. You cannot reach such a silence until you purify your personality nature. Raise it to extreme integrity, but there is an exception, and that exception is when a great teacher builds a wall of electricity around your mental ear and personality vehicles. This teacher builds, again, this is a rare case, which enables you to hear the voice of that great teacher and the voice of your higher self. In each initiation, you enter into a deep silence, and a voice addresses you. It is your higher self that speaks to you first. Then your master. Then you hear the voice of Christ, and in a more elevated initiation, you're going to hear the voice of eternal youth. So why stay glued to CNN and MSNBC? We are told that each subjective ashram is protected by an electric wall of silence. In that state of silence, it is in that state of silence the voice of your master is heard and registered. So silence is the process of cutting the conversation line between your lower vehicles, your physical, astral, lower mental vehicles, through an increasing rate of radiation. Silence is a form of relaxation which takes you into true meditation. It has 3 stages. The first stage is the silence of your physical body. The second stage is the silence of your emotions or your emotional expressions. And the third stage is the silence of your mind. From this stage, you pass from meditation into contemplation. And it is at this stage of your beingness you will surrender yourself to higher guidance. It's not waiting. It's not asking your guide to give you a parking place. I'm going way beyond that, although that's kind of nice. It's nice. It's like I have Running Bear. Running Bear has been with me forever. He does get tired of me asking, but anyway, that's not what I'm talking about here. Silence is important to be. It is important in the relationship you have with your chosen great teacher. Now I'm going to close with reading a letter by Helena Rourke. She writes to one of her students where she's discussing the spiritual practicality of silence and the great teacher. This is from Letter Volume 1, August 29th, and she wrote this in 1934. But it was just like yesterday, or even right now. Okay. This is what she said to her student. She said, "For everyone who enters the path of discipleship, it is absolutely essential to decide in the depth of the heart which of the great teachers of the brotherhood is nearest to you, and then to surrender yourself completely to the higher guidance, without any limitation, without any condition." The beginner will not necessarily receive a message from the chosen great teacher yet, but hope must not be lost. Great patience and courage must be found. In spite of the silence of the great teacher, the aspirant must continue to strive and to work toward perfecting themselves, applying their ability for the general good. Are you able to choose a life full of renunciation, she said, full of courage and intensive labor for the general welfare? Can you patiently wait for a message from the great teacher in spite of possibly years of silence? But if the path of the heart is close to you, your path may suddenly be shortened and become beautiful. Everything is in your hands. Let this truth cheer and inspire you, she says. In another letter to her student, she says, and now, regarding the voice of silence, or the voice of the invisible teacher, most certainly this voice may not necessarily be the voice of your higher self, but precisely the voice of the teacher. For these manifestations are almost indissolubly. I tried to practice this word and I never could get it. So I'm going to spell it, okay? Indissolubly. Linked with each other. Is it possible to hear the voice of the teacher if your higher self is in a quiet state? In true spiritual development, our higher self is indeed receptive to the voice of the invisible teacher. And that's the end of the quote. Therefore, when we begin to hear the voice of the teacher, we will also hear the voice of our higher self. And remember, silence is golden. Takes on a whole different meaning, doesn't it?